So YouTube, I'm here today with an intermediate mixer, a beginner, and a dumbass. Today, I'm going to be going through like my little mixing process and explaining pretty much what I do and why I do it. So we're going to be in headphones for this session. If there's any questions, this is going to be an intermediate mixer, and there's going to be, my guy over here who's new to it, who's going to be able to ask questions, and I'll be able to give both a perspective. The first thing that I do when I get a session is, this is obviously the beat, right? So I just name everything. So this is your playlist, and if you click this, it'll go over here. Sometimes it might end up in your patterns, blah blah blah. So you just click this, and this is your.
The pattern.
So a pattern is like if you want to make a beat, it'll loop something for you basically. So this, I'm gonna just left click it, and then it's gonna select it over here, and on your left audio clip, and I'm gonna right click it, and I'm gonna do rename, hotkey R. So no hand on the mouse, just hotkey R, and I'm gonna name it beat. So this is what I'm doing. I'm soloing these, meaning that it's only gonna play one. I'm controlling and left clicking to solo, and if you control left click again, all of them will come back, right? So that's how I'm doing that, by the way. So then I'm clicking in this black bar. If you don't click in this black bar, you move this basically, and if you don't, then you move this. So the black bar is how I'm doing things pretty much. Here is gonna move this, or you could use this, but it's a lot more of a pain in the butt if you use that. But so if you want to start from the beginning, just take the little green bar up here and just drag it over to the left. I'll go to the channel rack, which is F6. Learn your hotkeys for sure, and make everything faster. If you were making a beat, you would have to see your little samples and stuff, blah blah blah. But in this case, we're using it for our vocals, so we're gonna left click this box, make it do this, and then left click the box, and then drag it down, and that'll select it. So, boom, however you want to do it. That's gonna highlight all of them, and then press Control L. Control L is gonna send it to the mixer. This is your mixer.
This is like where you come up with your vocal chains and whatnot, or
Yes, sir. I'm gonna make everything mono except for the beat. So now it's in the middle. So I'm gonna do it with all of these, and you can see it on the little mixer thingy thing. One more thing, you can click this and make it do like little waveform stuff, but you don't have to. This is obviously quiet. I always like to turn my beat down. I'm here. I'm gonna go to my slots, and I'm just gonna pull out an EQ. So I typically use Fruity Fab Parametric EQ2.
I've used this before. It's
Right.
actually a really good one for stock.
Yep, it's a stock plugin. Everyone has it, and I'll just boost the volume to where I can hear everything.
Now, isn't this like the bad thing to do is to start mixing the EQing with headphones on?
Well, I guess it depends. I'm very used to it. I don't want to do the monitor zone because the video
Right.
would be bad audio quality. But I normally mix in headphones. Like if I live stream, I mix in headphones or.
Really?
But you could use your monitors. It depends on your headphones. You also have to learn your headphones.
Yeah, because I've noticed like when I used to mix your headphones and it'd sound really good through your headphones, and then when you put it through like a monitor,
Mm-hmm.
you get a whole different sound. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. That's actually called referencing, making sure like your mix translates and things like that. So like I wouldn't mix on the headphones he's wearing. I wouldn't mix on those. Those are like lower end headphones.
So what about like say for example I got Audio Technicas, but they're like I think like the $60 or $70 ones. They're one of the cheaper ones, but they're
Well, it depends on what you have as well. So if your room isn't treated a certain way, when you play through your monitors, you might actually get a buildup of certain frequencies. So let's say that in your room you get a buildup of the 500 frequency. So whenever you do it in your monitors, you always cut a lot of that. But then when you go listening to a car or in someone else's house, you're like, where's all my mid-range? Well, you cut it because that's what you're hearing in your room.
oh no shit.
Right.
Okay.
So, but that's what I'm saying. So like if I play it in my monitors, right, I'm going to hear something different than here, right? Because the room is going to have a different frequency curve than my headphones. My headphones are actually going to have a different frequency curve as well. So mixing actually depends mostly on your room if you're using monitors. Like if you have a live room that goes like clap and then there's like very reverby, that'll mess up your mix because you'll be hearing a buildup. You ever put like reverb on your vocals, and if like say you put like a 3-second reverb, and now everything you say kind of crashes into each other.
Yeah.
It'll sound like that. So I'll show you real quick. And let's put the decay all the way up. The decay is how long the reverb lasts.
Like can make things disappear.
You see, like how all of that's clashing. Depending on how your room is, could actually replicate that. Your room affects like the frequencies that you hear. So like my room has a lot of sound absorption. If your room doesn't have sound absorption, you might get things bouncing off one wall.
Bouncing from one wall to the other.
Right. That's why sometimes when people record, they actually get a buildup of certain frequencies that they have to cut a lot because it's bouncing off a wall and coming back into the mic, into the recording.
I got one of those mic shields and the mic stand and shit. But, I set up a blanket behind all of that too now. So.
Oh yeah, you showed me a picture.
So like, actually, I've noticed a big difference because like your voice isn't traveling no more.
Right.
Even even in that mic shield, like my voice was still traveling even past that. So like, I don't know, with that blanket actually, like I said, made a big difference.
So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna double click this, and I'm gonna click this little wrench. And this is gonna give me basically clip gain. So I'm gonna use it to turn it up instead of going through an EQ to do it.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not alright.
I only say that because it recorded a little quiet, whatever.
I was gonna say it kind of made it sound a little more full.
Right. All I did was bring up the volume.
That was it.
Mm-hmm. So boom, we're in our EQ. So the first thing I normally do is EQ. That's normally the first thing I would do. But what I'm gonna actually do now is I'm going to set up buses. So what a bus is, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to make like a channel that I'm going to send certain things to. So like if I'm going to make a bus for my reverb, I'm going to send my vocals to that bus. It's going to separate the dry from the wet. So dry being no effects, and then the wet being the one with effects. So now my dry vocal is going to go dry to the master, as well as to the bus, which is going to make it wet, and then to the master, and I can blend it too. So if I wanted to make a bus for my drums, it would be a drum bus. All of my drums would go to that bus. That way, when I put effects on the drum bus, it affects all of the drums together instead of just one drum individually. So in the same case as my vocals, if I had background vocals, I might put a little EQ on there on each one separately, and then a little bit of compression separately. But I could also then, after that, take a multi-band compressor and say I want more mids out of the whole thing as a whole. And then it would actually compress them equally versus individually. You know what I mean? So, and I'll show you guys that. So right now, the way that you would make a bus in FL Studio, you would just name it. So I might say, in this case, I'm going to make a submix bus. Everything's going to route to this. Nothing's going to route to the master. Okay, so I'm going to take this control, left click, highlight them, right click to route to this track only. For the sake of the video, I'm going to make a Vox bus. I'm going to make a instrumental bus. And so I'm going to route it. Left click, route to instrumental only, instrumental to the submix. In this case, I basically use the submix as a replacement for the master. I use it to separate because I want to do certain effects on my sub. So, and here's what I mean. Control left click to unsolo everything. And then on my submix, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, actually, I'll just show you with the stock EQ. I'm going to click the stock EQ. I'm going to do 40, 18. I'm going to cut off 200 to 3000. In you guys' case, you could either turn this knob, which is mono, all the way to the right is mono, all the way to the left is stereo, and it tells you at the very top left. So up here, it tells you most knobs what it's doing. So that's just going to make it mono. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a Fruity stereo enhancer, turn all the way to the right, which is the same knob as this. But now, these are my effects on here. This little orange thing is the bypass knob, so bypass effects. So the reason why I do this is I can emulate through the difference. Right. So now it's in mono. We're mixing in mono, and we're mixing with pretty much no sense of low end and no sense of high end. This is going to allow us to target our mid range and allow things to punch in through the mid range. That's what it sounds like with the effects on. If I click this, I'm going to bypass the effects.
I can make things
This turns it
disappear in my
off.
mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not alright.
So this is normally how I set up my mixes. I'll mix through this. And then once I'm like, okay, everything actually sounds good for what it is, then I'll turn it off and then I'll address more issues. I said, so we're not hearing the low end. So this is cutting out like 70-ish, right? 100 is kind of safe, but we're going to come back and mess with that afterwards. Now what I'm going to listen for some boxy frequencies, which it takes like, ear training to hear. Almost like we're talking like this. If you talk like this versus talk like this,
Yeah.
this sounds boxy.
Close
This sounds
and
kind of
open.
right. I'm alt left clicking to reset it, but I'm scrolling up and down to mess with the Q. The Q is how sharp this would be sharp or how narrow the EQ band is.
Okay.
So
I can make things disappear in my mind.
this sounds like
Know I've
this,
been an asshole, that's not
right?
alright.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some out.
I can make things disappear
Oh, that made a big
in my
difference.
mind.
So like the difference between this,
I can make things.
well actually I'll use this for the sake of the video so people really get it. I'm using the bypass button down here.
I can make things disappear in my mind.
This is
I know
off.
I've been an asshole, that's not alright.
On.
Telling me it's
That sounds a lot clearer. I mean, how much you cut depends on, you, and like you'll start to develop how much you want to cut, how much you don't want to cut. So then
I
I'm
notice I usually do about the same amount for every time I.
if you have
Because your voice is naturally going to be almost identical every time you make music.
right, especially if you're recording in the same room,
Yeah.
the same mic, that's where templates come into play. So
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not alright.
I'm gonna cut a little bit of this.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not alright.
So honestly, that's the only two cuts I feel like I need to do. You could do more if you hear more problems in there. So what I'm gonna do is it's called gain staging, making sure that it goes in the same volume as it comes out. So that way you don't trick yourself in thinking that something is better than it actually is, because we perceive things that are louder as better just because they're louder. That's why when people are like, "Oh, what did you do to 808?" I just turned it up.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not alright. You're telling me you think I'm so different. But
You don't think we got to add any more higher frequency to that?
Not just yet. So normally my approach to mixing is I'm gonna cut first and take care of things I don't like first, and then I'm gonna boost it. Like after.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Right.
That's the finalizing part. Okay.
Right. Well, in my opinion, but that's just how I do it. So I'm going to skip a slot because I want to use a de-esser just in case. I just want to make sure that slot is available. I'm not going to do it now because obviously I can't hear above 3,000 hertz, which is what we would typically be de-essing. So I'm saving that for later. So I'm going to skip a slot and I'm going to open up a compressor. So I'm going to set the ratio to 3:1. That's like light compression.
I was gonna ask, is that tight? Like, is that like a tight sound almost?
I think, in my opinion, I think it's pretty standard. Like, I think a lot of people use that 3:1, but I'm honestly not that great with compressors. But I've gotten to the point where I kind of like, oh, this kind of sounds good, so like I'll use it.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm gonna turn the threshold knob all the way down, and then I'm gonna gain it up because without it, you can't hear anything.
in my mind.
So now I'm gaining it up so we can hear what the settings are doing in the compressor. I'm gonna turn the release all the way down and the attack all the way down.
I can make things.
So I'm gonna bring them back.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's
So the attack is how fast the compressor engages, and your release is how long does your compressor hold right before it has to attack again, pretty much. And your threshold is at what point in volume will your compressor activate. If your threshold is here and your volume is here, your compressor will never activate if your volume doesn't get past
It
the
has to
compressor.
peak past a certain decibel before it actually activates.
Right. So for example,
I can make things disappear in my mind.
so obviously you hit past 15, right? So if I set this compressor
So like, let's say
At-
13.
right, it'll never hit because 13 is above 15. But if it's at 15 and I set the threshold to 15, it'll activate when it hits 15 basically. So what your ratio does is it says every 3 dB over the threshold, only 1 dB is going to be allowed out. So if I say a 4-to-1 ratio, every 4 dB over the threshold, only 1 dB will be allowed out. Threshold all the way down, and we're going to mess with the attack and the release to see what the compressor is doing.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not alright. I can make things disappear in my mind.
I'm going to reset the
That's
gain.
where you want to have to adjust your gain, right?
Right. So now I'm going to dial it back.
Disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not alright. You're telling me you think I'm so different. But in the end, and I'm just the same.
So basically what I'm trying to do with the compressor is I'm trying to hold the vocal to a less dynamic state. So the purpose of a compressor is to make pretty much volume automation, make the volume more consistent. So if my volume is going here and then here, all the way here and like this, and it's doing that the whole song, the compressor is going to say, okay, we're going to try to keep it as close to here as possible. So there's this thing called dynamic range, which is basically the lowest point to the loudest point, right? Your vocals this might be the quietest part of the vocal and this might be the loudest. The compressor is going to say, okay,
Well, let's meet it like the middle or something. And
right, we're going to squash this to control the dynamic range. So essentially, what we're aiming to do here is to control the dynamic range so it doesn't jump as much. So let's check this out. So
I can make things disappear in my mind.
So let's say it peaks at -12, right? We're going to do our compressor.
I can make things disappear in my mind.
Notice it didn't hit 12. So now we're going to gainstage it to make it hit 12.
I can make things disappear in my mind.
So that one just a little bit over.
I can make things disappear in my mind.
It went a little over a little bit more. So we're going to bring it back down.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know.
Okay, so we're going to bring it down some more. This ain't being a pain in the dick.
are you going to like 12 because it's like in the midpoint of that?
Nope,
that-
I'm going to 12 because that was the loudest point that it peaked at.
Oh, okay.
I can make things disappear in my mind.
Okay, so now it's at 12, right? So
I can make things disappear in my mind.
so I'm A and Bing it right now.
I can make things disappear
What?
in my mind.
So I'm A and Bing it, meaning like with and without. I'm
Okay.
bypassing. So here it goes.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not alright.
So actually, with the compressor on, it gave the vocal a little bit more body. So if I turn this off,
I can make things disappear in my mind.
right, and if I put it on,
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know.
I feel like it
I'm
gave
not
it a
really
more.
noticing too much.
Hmm?
I didn't really notice too much, honestly.
Okay, maybe it'll be better to hear with this.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not
Yeah.
alright.
Kind of gave it more warmth.
Sometimes I compress twice depending on the vocal. Like if I want a little bit more control over the vocal, but compressing in a series is called series compression or serial compression. I'm sorry, meaning that you're going to do multiple layers compression at once. Cheat code. I'm going to click this little drop down on the left and save preset as. I'm just going to drag it here. The same exact compression settings. I'm going to switch it to 2-to-1. In this case, just to try it. I mean, it always depends. Like you could have to go harder with the ratio or softer with the ratio, depending on the situation. It depends on the need. Don't think that this is just because this is just what I normally do. Because what if you get a vocal that somebody sent you that they had already compressed, right? Like, do you need to compress it anymore? Like, are you actually listening to the track, or are you just saying, I normally do this, so I'm going to do it? Every tool that you reach for should be for a purpose. Like, oh, this peak is here, and this peak is, like, at the lowest point is here. I'm going to compress it so that I can get more, so I can be closer in volume, whatever. Or it's like, oh, I hear a little bit of muddiness or a little bit of harshness, so I'm going to use this tool to fix that. Or if you get a vocal and it sounds fine, you don't need to do anything to it. Just make sure that it's level or, whatever. So in this case, I'm only going to do a 2-to-1 because I don't want to OD. I don't want it to sound super compressed. I want it to be a little bit more natural. It peaks at -12, obviously. We already went over that. But the whole thing isn't always at -12.
I can make things disappear in my mind.
You see what I'm saying? Down here,
I can't really see what the number is, but I'd say it's probably like -8, if anything.
right, -18-ish. So I'm going to take this.
Or 18, yeah.
And I'm going to bring it a little bit back. So I'm going to probably do like -15. And I'm actually going to set the attack a little bit more, a little faster, and the release a little slower.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not alright. You're telling me you think I'm so different.
And that's the thing, it doesn't sound like too much of a difference to me.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not alright.
I feel like it got more body.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not alright.
Yeah, when you're recording, you know how it obviously spikes sometimes, but what's an average you should usually, for a consistent sound, you should be at to get like a consistent, not over peaking, but in the middle, like.
So in our case, if I was using a mic, I would try to be getting the loudest signal I possibly could without one clipping or without too much room noise. So like when I stream, I have my clip gain up a lot, so I don't have to be on the mic, but you can actually hear people in the background. So I could never record that because if I go to compress, that room noise is actually going to come into the vocal.
So in my case, since mine's in my house, in my room, there's like a little bit more noises in my house.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I set the mic. I have people like sing their song or rap, whatever they're gonna do, as if they're really gonna do it, so I can gain my voice.
As you should.
But also, I got a negative. I could drop my decibels on my mic to -20.
Mm-hmm.
So should I be doing that in my case? You think, since I got more like noises throughout the house?
No, I think.
Or do you think 0 decibels is fine on the mic?
Whatever will allow your vocal to get the most volume without clipping or without room noise. Because basically what happens is every mic has a noise floor. So the noise floor is basically the quietest the mic will pick up.
Yeah.
If the loudest point I get is at 9, right? Or let's just say 12 dB. The loudest point I get is 12 dB. And the quietest I get is -15, right? I should actually be able to push that sound higher. Without clipping. Thus, bringing the noise actually louder with it as well. That means, like, if I compress, I'm just going to go and get that noise. If I bring my volume down recording to a point where it doesn't record any noise in the background, but it still picks up vocals, I could actually safely turn that volume up without any noise coming into the vocal. So if you're recording and your mic isn't picking up any noise, but it's picking up a clean line of the vocal, then that should be the goal. That way when you compress, no noise comes in. But if you're recording loud, just for the sake of it being loud, and then there's room noise in it, and then you don't hear it, and then you go to compress it, and you hear these noise, and now all of a sudden you hear a baby in the background or something. So now I'm listening.
I can make things disappear in my mind.
Very consistent. This is bypass.
Telling me you think I'm so different. But in the end, I'm just the same kid. Look away.
So that's my main vocal. That's all I really want to do for the mid range. So now I'm going to listen again, and now I can actually mess with the low end and the highs.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not alright. You're telling me you think I'm so different. But in the end, I'm just the same kid. Look away. I don't make much noise.
I got such a raspy voice.
A huge thing to note is that the order that you put your effects on is the order things will be affected.
I was going to say, I've noticed that. I used to make that mistake a lot.
I do this so often that I'm like, I kind of like know what's safe for me when I normally cut. So I mean, what I did was pretty much stupid. If I boost this, it's going to change the way that the compressors work because they also work off the energy as well.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not alright. You're telling me you think I'm so different, but in the end, and I'm just the same kid.
You don't think it needs any higher end or anything?
Do you think you want it to have higher end?
I like I said, I usually go for that brighter sound. So
Right.
that's just personally. I know everybody's different, but I like having vocals that pop. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Okay, so then right here, we will add our EQ.
So you EQ it first, compress it, and then compress it again, and now you're EQing it one more time.
Right. So now I can boost what I like. Now that everything's under control. So basically, if I get control over the frequency spectrum, which would be EQ, and then I can get control over the volume, I can now safely boost what I like because the vocals already controlled.
Things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not alright.
Like, so now, if I want to add more body to it, if I think it's thin,
Bring the bass up, well, low frequency.
Right, whatever you want to boost just to get that vocal to, you know what I mean? Like,
I got you.
Or if I wanted to cut some more, I could. I mean, I normally don't cut after I compress.
Like, that's pretty crisp right there. Like,
That's how I would normally do it. And I mean, it depends on the vocal. When I use my C214, I don't use that mic when I record myself because it's bright. It already boosts anywhere from 2 to like 5K hertz. I already have a voice that kind of lies in that range. So it doesn't make me sound better. It actually makes my vocal sound harsher.
Obviously, I noticed with my mic, it's actually, I get really good mid-range with my mic. That's the Aston Origin.
Right.
I don't play around with the mid-range too much on my microphone.
Right.
I usually kind of can just leave that like where it's at. Sometimes I might have to bring up a little bit, but not much.
That's pretty much learning your mic in the same way I would learn my room. If I always mixed on the monitors, I would have learning your room is like how does it translate to this?
Yeah.
So now we have a very controlled vocal.
I can make things disappear
yeah, that's like on point.
So check this out. Let's say in this case, you know, you want auto tune. I'm gonna use Waves Real Tune. Auto tune is always the first thing that goes on the chamber. So your retune speed is how fast, basically like your attack knob. How fast is the auto tune gonna activate, or how slow is it gonna activate?
I usually turn that up all the way. I notice I get the cleanest sound with that. Because if you turn it down, then you'll get like that really like slow, like lethargic sound.
And sometimes it doesn't. It makes it funny.
Yeah.
I want it to be more of a natural sound, so I'm gonna bring the transition back.
I'm so different, but in the end, and I'm just the same kid. Look away. I don't make much noise today. My family and my friends wondering if I.
Obviously, it jumps from different pitches. Obviously. How do you get it where it's the most consistent though?
The auto tune is doing is it's saying, okay, this is the pitch, this is what he's singing, but this isn't what he's supposed to be singing, so we're gonna move it up to that note kind of thing. So like, I'll show you real quick. All I did was double click this, right click, edit in pitch corrector. Now what's happening is they're all on a pitch, right? But check this out. This is called your center knob. And this is what is behind the scenes in auto tunes. This is gonna put it on the actual pitch. They're not on the actual. No one sings directly on pitch, right? Well, to my knowledge, they don't.
No,
like,
it's physically impossible.
This one right here is hella close though. Pete, when I move it, it barely moves. Okay. So people get really close. So basically, what the auto tune does is it's doing this, and then it's actually snapping it onto the scale. That's pretty much what auto tune is doing. You'll hear it. I mean, always mess with the knobs, and you'll learn what they do for yourself. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, I learned not to play with vibrato anymore.
Yo.
I learned to stop playing with that one real quick. I used it the one day, and I'm like, what the f happened to my voice? I'm like, I didn't sound like this 10 minutes ago. So now I don't play with that at all. Actually, 9 out of 10 times I turned that off completely.
Okay, so here's the cheat code. This sounds good.
I can make things disappear in my mind.
I'm actually gonna turn this down a little bit.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not alright.
So why don't we just take this setting and take it somewhere else and put it on the ad lib?
Whatever my original vocal chain is, I usually do that, but I'll add like a chorus effect 9 out of 10 times for like the ad libs and background vocal.
So here's the difference. This one's clearly louder than this one.
Oh yeah. Right.
So what you see it? So what we'll have to do is volume match. But this one right here is not too far off from this one. So I can just go into the setting, right click, copy, paste, and I'm going to turn it up just a tad. But normally what I would do with this vocal, I would use the multiband compressor on this. So, and
Oh wow, that's confusing.
I'm going to set this to 200 and this one to 3000. Always look at the top left because it tells you what you're doing for the most part.
Now you're doing more cuts on highs and lows again, or?
Yeah, so this is separating the lows from the mids from the highs. So I'm going to take things, I'm going to use it to control the tonality of the frequencies. So check this out.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been.
Oh, I muted them. I meant bypass, not mute. Sorry.
I can make things disappear in my mind.
Right, so those are the mids. So, and there's the lows.
I can make things disappear.
I don't want any lows in this case.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not alright. You're telling me you think I'm so different.
I'm not gonna lie, I cheat with my multi-compressor.
You use a preset?
A preset they come with, it's one called Smooth, and it's actually
It's smooth, it's pretty better.
good. Like it's.
Well, I mean, I'm not. I know what purpose. I'm not saying you don't know what purpose you're using it for, but I know what purpose I'm using this for. I'm just gonna basically take this frequency and move it down a little bit. This one, leave it where it is, and bring this one down more. So, and I'm using it to gain as well.
I can make things disappear in my mind.
So now it actually sounds like a little thinner.
I can make things disappear in my mind.
Basically, what I'm using it for is I don't want the body of the background vocal to interfere with the body of the main vocal. So I'm turning down what would be the body, which would be like the low mids, or the.
Because you want really just a higher end on those, don't you?
Well, it depends. If you want it to have body, then that's what you would go for. But in this case, I don't want it to clash in that frequency, basically.
Okay.
So another thing I like to do when I do this is I like to, basically what I did was I hold shift, left click, drag down. And I'm going to make this unique. And then, so I click this little waveform on the top left right here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, do save mixer state as, same thing. Make sure it's routed to my vocals, blah, blah, blah. And then for this one, it's already unique, so I could change it. So I'm going to switch this one to 8. Now, I'm going to get to panning. So for some reason, it doesn't tell me if I pan right here on the ones I already used. So I go to this one, and I'll say 20 left. Right click, press C. Right click, press P to paste. And this one at 20 as well. So right click C, right click paste.
You don't go full 100 for the panning?
You can. I normally do a closer
Or
panning.
you just want like a really faint sound, so it's not really. Because I know, like, if you I know with panning, that can make or break a song really bad.
Yeah.
Like, because you can get like that kind of boxed in sound almost.
Mm-hmm.
If you got it up like too much with the panning. But usually what I do is like I'll turn the pan all the way to left 100, all the way to right 100, but I'll drop it down to like negative like 23 decibels usually for my voice.
Right.
I know everybody's obviously different, but
So the main vocal should always be down the middle.
yeah.
But if you have vocals that you're using as harmonies, the closer they are to the main vocal, the tighter, in my opinion, the tighter the harmony sounds.
Oh,
Kinda thing.
that's what your panning is. That's you're spreading a width like close to.
Well, not width though, not width. Just where it is and left to right.
Yeah.
Right. So like
okay.
So like if I pan it hard left and right, it's gonna be hard
Hard.
left in the left ear, hard right in the right ear. But I could also pan it 20, 50. You know what I mean? So like it's not So now it actually seems more like it's in the mid right
Center.
because it's yeah. So I'll show you. So this is what I was planning on doing. And I'm gonna have to bring these down because they're both the same volume and stuff. So
I can make things disappear in my mind.
so that versus this,
I can make things disappear in my mind.
right? And in your case, you said you like to do a hard left and right.
I can make things disappear in my mind.
Yeah, no, I can hear the difference.
Right. So now peep this. So I could leave this one hard right and then leave this one over here.
I can make things disappear in
Now
my
it kind of
mind.
sounds like really centered.
Now that yeah, so now it sounds like it's more. Now it sounds like it's more over here than it is one or the other. You know what I mean? So I mean, like if you can do whatever you want with your pen, whatever you like. Honestly, I typically go for this, but I mean I could go wider.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not right. You're telling me you think I'm so.
So now it's time for me to add like a little reverb bus. So I normally have my sends, which is so in routing, there's sends and there's returns. So your returns are the things that are actually bust. So your FX return because your reverb isn't FX. This is going to be returning to the vocal, right? But this I'm going to be sending my background vocals to here, which I'm just left clicking. This is routing. This is literally tell you what's happening. Blah blah blah. So this is my send. I'm sending to the bus, and then the bus is returning to somewhere else, but it's actually sending to another bus. But and sometimes people say affects your sends and your returns. It depends on the person. I just say I'm sending this here and I'm sending it there. Blah blah blah. I am going to turn off the main vocal, which you always want to mix in context, always. But I don't feel like mixing in context right now. My context is going to be having, my reverb on and my dries on. So I'm going to turn the dry off because I already have a dry version. I'm turning my wet all the way up. So I'm just going to basically dial in the tail, the size of the reverb, and what's going into the reverb. So I'm going to use this low cut. I'm going to turn the high cut off using low cut. I'm going to take the high cut and bring it back to taste.
Personally, I would bring that one. If it were me, I would have brought that one down a little bit.
This one?
Yeah. Like even a little bit more. Like right there is like almost ideal for me.
Right here?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of like ideal, like sound like I usually go towards.
Okay, word. Obviously, everything's to taste,
Right.
And then, so this is the size of the reverb. This would be the size, so you can bring it all the way up or down.
Now, me personally, I like it where it's almost got like that dry, but like just enough, like where you can barely hear the reverb.
That would be the volume of the reverb.
The volume? Okay.
Mm-hmm. So typically with my background vocals, I like a wider size reverb. And with my main vocals, I like a shorter size reverb. But this is fine right here. Then we can mess with the decay, which can be a little heavy. And you can always check your decay by letting it go. Now we can bring up the volume of it. If you ever have a hard time hearing what your reverb is doing because you feel like it's too low, just turn off the bus and turn it back on. You'll literally hear your vocals lose life or have too much happen.
Yeah.
So check this out. This is with it off. See, it comes to life a little bit right there. And then bring your main vocal back in. In my case, is what I would do.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not right. You're telling me.
And then obviously, if you're like, oh, okay, maybe I do want more reverb now that I have my main vocal, you can do that. In this case, I'm gonna do Once again,
in your case, what would you do for that for the reverb? Would you put more on that personally?
I would probably up the decay depending on the situation. Like I would actually do some automation on the reverb. And like, okay, so automate the delay knob. It's like, hey, on this word, I want you to actually have more decay. But when it comes to this word, like, no, like less decay, blah, blah, blah. That way it's out of the way of itself because it's still the tail of the reverb. That can actually muddy up your mix, the tail. So another way to be very cognizant of that could be to put an EQ after your reverb. I typically actually EQ before my reverb, but this EQ actually hasn't. I mean, this reverb has an EQ on it. You want to make sure you have control of your vocal,
Yeah.
and then because the reverb is going to mask
spread
a lot
it
of
like
things.
horrible, like crazy. So
It's just going to enhance what's bad. That's why when I cut stuff, like your effects are enhancers. So when I do my first mix, I don't put any enhancers on it or sweeteners. I call them that sometimes. So like your reverb delay, because it's like you don't actually hear what's going on in the dry vocal. So like normally when I do my first mix, I don't use reverb or delay. What you could do is you could EQ before. Always, I mean I don't want to say always, but I always EQ going into my reverb to keep it clean. I'm going to duplicate this reverb and I'm going to turn the EQs off. This is what will be going on in my reverb. Right? So that would be what's going on in reverb. Right? I could EQ stuff out. And you can get fancy. I typically just throw a filter. But you can still do your regular EQ cuts. But either way, I always like to EQ going into the reverb. But in this case, I didn't need to, only because I already had EQ options. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the main vocal and send it to a separate reverb because I want my main vocal to have a smaller size than my background.
So it's not dry.
Right, and that's my preference. Your preference might be different.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not right. You're telling me you think I'm so different, but in the end you're not.
So like me personally, I'm more of like a less reverb than that. Like where it's almost dry, but it's got just enough that you can hear like the.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not right. You're telling
Like
me you
where?
think I'm so different.
Just like a tad bit more now. Not like going backwards but going up.
Look away. I don't make much noise today. My family and my friends wondering if I'm okay. But I tell them turn away. I can't let them see this kid.
Yeah, right about right there.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not right. You're telling me you think I'm so different, but in the end and I'm just the same kid. Look away. I don't make much noise today. My family and my friends wondering if I'm okay. But I tell them turn away. I can't let them see this kid. Roll up in a ball, fighting, kicking and screaming, and I know I did too much.
So that's how I would attack vocals, and like obviously that's very minimalistic. You can be more aggressive in spots. This is like, just real quick, like this is all stock stuff.
Yeah.
And once again, like,
is there really that much of a difference between this like stock plugins to like aftermarket? Like,
if you take a Pro Q3 and you put it up against a stock plugin, some stock plugins, it depends. Most people, when they get aftermarket plugins, it's because it gives them certain controls that stock plugins won't, or even just because of the name that it's a stock plugin. So, for example, Pro Q3 has a dynamic equalizer in it as well as a static. It also has mid-side EQ, left and right EQ, which stock plugins normally don't have. And it also, if you have more than one Pro Q3 on certain, so let's say I have it on the main vocal, the ad-lib, the background vocal, a second background vocal, Pro Q3 will actually talk to each other and say, oh, there's clashing here. Like, do you want to fix that? Or like Picture versus, Antares Auto-Tune or Waves Real Tune. Like, sometimes they're easier to look at, or sometimes they're one knob like does
I
so
can
much.
say, for example, like the G Snap Auto Tune versus the Antares Auto Tune is just there's no comparison.
There's not a session I have where I don't reach for this. I might have Pro Q3 or Pro Q2, and you know I'm still gonna use this because for one, stock plugins are less CPU intensive. 9 times out of 10, you know it's native to the DAW. Like if I use a bunch of Waves plugins, that'll like run my CPU up. Check this out.
Isotope is good for that.
Right, like dude, it's look at my CPU usage here, 6. I mean, I'm only using one thing that's not native to FL. You get me? So, I mean, you do what you want with that information. Normally, it's less harder on the CPU. So, one more thing that I would do is I would make a delay bus and do the same thing I did with the reverb. You do the delay to taste, and you can do that with a lot of plugins. Something that I would do for the beat is I tend to duplicate it. So once again, shift left click. I'm going to do make unique. I'm going to duplicate it so that I can do effects to that duplicated version. So if I want my bass to hit harder and it's only a 2-track beat, I'm going to isolate where my bass is and turn it up. This is why having a bus is so good. Turned off all the vocals in one button. So check this out. So these are my vocals. I'm left clicking. This is FL. Left clicking, and holding control left click, and I'm holding Alt, pressing right click, and then left click. You know, this is unique. I'm gonna do Control L. It's gonna open it to another one. Shift left click. You know, drag it. Same thing. Control L. Boom. So now what I'm gonna do is I am going to. That's shift down. I'm going to affect these beats. So I'm going to route these left, control left click, and then right click this, route to this track only. I want more sub. I feel like this beat should have more sub. So that might be a little out, but since it's since it's the lows, I'm gonna put it in mono.
Alright, you're telling me you think I'm so different, but in the end, and I'm just the same kid. Look away, I don't make much noise today in my family.
But in general, like that's just a general thing. Like if you're like, oh, I want it to have more of this, like. You could affect a version of the beat to have it. Transpire is a free plugin, by the way.
I can make things disappear in my...
Like, this messes with the transients of the beat. And then I can also take a compressor and bring the attack low, like lower the attack, and the release so it's catching the transients. Set it to soft. And then I might, well, just blend it, I guess.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been
Definitely brought a little bit more life to it.
We were able to bring more life into it, or whatever may be the case that you want. You just have to know how to get it. So, but yeah, so that's how I would approach it, you know. And then I would check again in this, just to make sure that all the levels are right.
I can make things disappear in my mind.
This is in mono right now.
And I might say, okay, well, hearing it again in mono, I might want to cut some of this out.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not right. Telling me you think I'm so different, but in the end, and I'm just the same kid. Look away, I don't make much noise today. My family and my friends wondering if I'm okay. But
you know, so then take it out.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not right. You're telling me you think I'm so different, but in the end, and I'm just the same kid. Look away, I don't.
But that's why I made, that's the main reason why I use a sub bus. but you might also put something on the sub bus that you want to affect the whole mix and you want to hear it throughout the whole thing. Because maybe you want to mix it to a saturator, you know. And then, so another thing, a limiter. I'm going to use, here's something I typically do. I typically bring an EQ in, and then I normally bring soft clipper in. I normally set my soft clipper to 70%, which is going to peak at -3 on here, and I boost into it.
Telling me you think I'm so different, but in the end and I'm just the same kid. Look away, I don't make much noise today, my family and my friends.
Right? And then, so now that I have it soft clipping, whatever, blah, blah, then I'll pull up in my limiter. I'm going to set my ceiling to, I normally set mine to -1, which it'll tell you up here. If you just move it, look up to the top left, it says limiter ceiling. I normally set mine to -1. I'm not really exactly sure why, but you can say it's -3. -1 just really ensures that I'm not clipping. And then bring the gain up.
I know I've been an asshole, that's not right. You're telling me you think I'm so different, but in the end and I'm just the same kid. Look away, I don't make much noise today, my family and my friends wondering if I'm okay, but I tell them turn away, I can't let them see this kid. Roll up in a ball, fighting, kicking and screaming, and I know I did too much. I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not right.
But I normally don't use this one. Mine is a lot easier to look at. Whatever limiter you have access to, and obviously learn what the knobs do. But but that's how I would approach mixing something like this.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole.
So yeah. Any questions or anything that you
That
guys?
just brought that completely to like a whole new sound.
I can make things disappear in my mind. I know I've been an asshole, that's not right. You're telling me you think I'm so different, but in the end and I'm just the same kid. Look away, I don't make much noise today, my family and my friends wondering if I'm okay, but I tell them turn away, I can't let them see this kid. Roll up in a ball, fighting, kicking and screaming, and I know I did too much.
Okay, so the last thing I want to show you guys is how to turn this into a template. So,
Well, vocal chains.
or all of it, the whole session. So if you want to make the vocal chain a template, you could right click, file, left click save as. I normally click and drag, left click save as, and then name it, blah blah blah, or save it wherever you want. Then whenever you want to pull up, right click, do and it'll pop up here, basically.
Okay.
Now, if I wanted to say, oh, I want this to be a Carroll template, I could just be like, okay, well, all of this, that won't be on the template. This won't be in the template. Everything's already routed, right? And then I'll turn this on because I'll start with my cuts, and I'll say, okay, well, let me save this template. How do you save the template again? Oh, save as. And in my case, I'm going to my documents, image line, FL Studio, projects, templates, boom, name it. And then, you close it because it won't load up otherwise. And then you open up FL again and you go here, new from template, and your template should be wherever you placed it or named it. So that's how you make it a template.